Hello guys, Greg Slayer here, and can Jagex fix Melee? Um, so this is not a addition to what Ryan said currently in his YouTube video for his problems with fixing Melee. This is just my own general discussion about it and my personal opinion, underline opinion. Um, this is a rant, and this is a rant going on. Uh, Basically, everyone who asks, well, Zach, can Jagex fix Melee? Like, can they do it? Like, what is your opinion on it? So I don't have to talk about this on my Twitch stream ever again. So I'm going to cover it all in a couple different areas. I'm not going to go over things in detail. I'm just going to go over things that really do, trigger me and definitely grind my gears. And like, it's just over the years, like Melee has been very good. It has been competitive because it was before like EOFs and before everything else. It was the most competitive due to the constraints that it had and the constraints of the style itself. Uh, and I do think in order for Melee to be competitive again in the competitive aspect with the constraints that still has in the game, it would definitely have to be the strongest style, and just definitely the strongest. Because if it's not stronger than Ranger or Magic, right, due to its constraints, you will never, it'll never see any competitive use, and it just will always stay the same, which is bad. And I think that it's unfortunate, but I do think that in order for it to be competitive against those styles, it will have to see more damage, and that's just the way it is. And to see any use out of it, once again, you have to deal with the melee constraints of different bosses that you're going around and fighting with, right? So that is my first little thing I want to talk about. Now we're going to go over everything else here. So what is wrong with Melee? So terrible adrenaline gain, boring boss constraints, and terrible new weapon support and nerfs. We're gonna go over these in detail, just one slide each, just to tell you and show you guys what my perspective is on the whole situation. The adrenaline problem. After Berserk rotation with Adrenaline Potion, you are left with 40-ish% adren to 70%-ish adren, depending on how many thresholds you use. Adrenaline before you cast bleeds, and 2 bleeds cost 30% adren by themselves to use them. That is a pretty big issue. To use more than 1 bleed, you have to spend 15% adren, 30% adren for both, and only both are good if you can walk the target, which is basically slaughter. And the one frustrating thing that I would say about Melee is there's no way to make your bleeds hit as high as possible. I wish there was a threshold that you could increase to give you more returns for the bleeds that you use, so your bleeds will hit super high. And I think that's what kind of like Melee would really need, is a consistent way to increase your damage all the time, 100%, and make it so you can hit as high as damage as possible on all of your bleeds, not 20% for 10 seconds with using Havoc with Gloves of the Passage. That is, you can't use Havoc all the time, and plus it only lasts for 10 seconds for your bleed duration to increase in damage, and that's just terrible. It's a step in the right direction for increasing the damage with your bleeds, but it's not what Melee needs. Definitely not. Now, moving on to the second problem. Melee is boring, and I've actually heard this a lot from different streamers and different friends that I know of, that they won't get into Melee-scaping because it's just so fucking boring. And I mean, like, we have to understand why it is boring. And honestly, I do agree. It is absolutely boring, and here are the reasons why. Only critical hits influence your damage and hit cap with Melee. That is 100% true, because there is nothing that defines your damage. You can't use different ammos. You can't use runes. You're very dependent upon critical hit chance for the only thing evaluating your damage and your strength bonus. But with overloads and the way overloads are right now, you can only max them out so much, and that is what really makes it so boring. Also, Magic uses different spells, and range can use different ammo, like I just said before, which means that you can be creative with your pocket slot items and not dependent on a Grim for increase of damage. I honestly think that not being able to mess around with different spells and different ammos and different things that you can use for, say, melee makes it less creative. So you're stuck in a position where you're using the same shit all the time everywhere. And it's like, well, why can't I use the new support, the new books and the new things that they're releasing? Like, why can't I use it? And that's the big problem. You can't, because melee is just very dependent upon your strength bonus, right? And then your critical hit. That's really it, and it's unfortunate, but that's the problem. One example that I have on the bottom here is something that, like, honestly, you guys have to think about in terms of melee versus like range. I only use range as an example because I can think of, like, basically the only effortless thing to give you a massive damage increase, and I kind of thought about the Saren Godbow. So, with a Saren Godbow, with an EOF, and this is not with an ECB, with just, like, even using T90 range weapons, using Ascensions with Ruby back criminals, you're looking at 90,000 to 200,000 damage per minute alone with them. Now you may think, oh, well, it's just SGB, you only can use it some places. Well, a lot of new content you can. And having an extra 90 to 200,000 damage per minute is disgusting for what you have to do in order to execute this properly. You don't have to be consistent with using the spec. You just got to use it whenever it's off cooldown. And you don't have to bolt switch either, because you're usually using rubies anyway. So it's like, and it costs you 90% adren without a Ring of Vigor. For all of it, for all three specs, you can get within a minute in like 10-second-ish area, or like a minute, past a minute technically, but it's literally in a minute you can get 3 off. And then you look at Dragon Claw spec with EOF, and you're like, okay, I can do 20 to 40,000 damage for 100% adrenaline. And it's like, what? Like, it's not even worth using. And you're right. Most places you cannot use, like, the Dragon Claws with the EOF combination. It just does not give you the damage, and it's just too much adrenaline for something that's not very good. And comparing these two, it's pretty cringe that for using an SGB, right? To be comparable with using an SGB once, right? Using it like one single time, or even using the SGB 3 times in a minute and hitting as low as possible, it will take you 200% adren just to even be near the point to even get to this point where you're almost hitting for 3 SGB specs. And that's just awful. Like, it doesn't feel good. It definitely is like, okay, why is SGB EOF with Ruby backs okay, but why does D-Claws suck so bad? And that's just one example. Moving on. Now, boss constraints. Most bosses in RuneScape have punishing effects for being melee distance, or have effects that pull you away from melee distance, ? Also, safe spotting issues. So, what I mean by this is that most newer things, and in dungeons, all of the bosses have mechanics where you have to stay away from your boss, like that you're fighting currently, to even be able to deal with some of its mechanics, like placing down fires at like all the dungeons, or like, being close to Siru with melee, or like it's very convoluted to have these good rotations that you can consistently use all the time. God forbid that you have to off the boss for a second, to do something or deal with a mechanic. It just makes it very awkward, and that is the biggest constraint that you are subjecting yourself to when you're using the style. And why? Like, they release some things to try and help this issue with delaying 30%, to up to 50% damage you take with custom fit true masterwork, but you only wear 3 pieces, so 30% of it is not very good. Not at all. It's not custom fit true masterwork is not game-breakingly amazing to the point where it can remove all the boss constraints of any mechanic. It simply cannot happen, and it's simply not good enough. And that is the most frustrating thing. And because of this problem, most new content RS3 requires convoluted effort just to use the style. And so we're talking about Arc Late Core, we're talking about Melee Zuck, we're talking about Hard Mode Zuck, where it's like you have to safe spot correctly, you have to you have to deal with, different mechanics of the bosses, like, with Glaycore with the minions, and then also with the adrenaline issue. And it requires too much setup and too many convoluted things to actually make it usable, just to use it there. Not suboptimal, not competitive, like not trying to beat Ranger Magic, but just try to use it. Like, it just makes it terrible. And like they need to stop releasing shit that's just very, very bad towards melee, and more things towards every style, and make every style usable in these things that they're releasing. And for anyone who's a melee one trick, or like, is into melee scaping, they will all agree 100% that it's kind of ridiculous the way they've been designing the new bosses in the game. And I agree. As a melee scaper that have been melee scaping for like over 4 years straight, and haven't really touched hardcore another style. The only place that melee would be consistently good in is solo Calpha King with a Karis and Desert Amulet 3, and that boss is literally ancient. Because you can do triple damage with the Karis, which is like, it's pretty sad. Where it's like, you're looking around with all the different content things that are out, and you can't use it anywhere to be competitive with someone using another style, because they'll just blow you out of the water with all their support and all their things that are really good. And you're just sitting here, doing the same shit over and over again, because you basically like are locked to doing only certain content in the game. And that's how they kind of made Melee, and I think it's unfortunate. Now, we're going to go into the next slide. Terrible new weapon support and nerfs. Okay, we're going to be talking about the exit kill. You don't even have enough bleeds to... So this is the one thing like that nobody's ever covered, that I am just like, why do they think this was okay? Like, why do they think this was alright? And they're like, okay, so first of all, you have to EOF the sword and use a Tremasterwork Spear of the Masterwork Spear of Annihilation in order to see any competitive use against someone else using melee as a style. Okay, that's different. Moving on. What else is really the big issue? Well, you don't even have enough bleeds in a solo in solo with anything you're fighting to give it the maximum stacks it needs to do its maximum damage. Why would you release something that the style itself cannot accomplish at its full potential? Like, why would you release this, and think it's okay that you can't use another bleed to actually extend the hit of this weapon in order to use it to its fullest potential? I don't understand why they did this. I think it's stupid, and I think that I have like it makes me wonder, like, what are they doing when they're making these new things in RuneScape? Or do they fully test them out? Are they fully like 100% like, are they talking to the right consultants? Are they consulting correctly? Are they talking to the greatest, the great PVMers in the game to see like the effectiveness of these weapons? Because any fucking idiot, literally any fucking idiot in RuneScape, right, with melee, with this weapon, will tell you, literally, anyone using this weapon be like, why don't you have enough bleeds to actually give you 4 stacks of the weapon spec? Because you can only use Dismember twice, Blood Tendrils once, and then Slaughter once. Like, what? Like, what do you, like, I don't know what they're doing. Like, I don't know what Jagex was doing when they're making this weapon, but, like, I have no idea. Like, I'm trying not to be, I'm not trying to criticize them, like, in a disrespectful manner. But seriously, though, think about it. Like, if you're spending 3 point something bill on this weapon, you have to buy it twice. Don't you think you could actually just make, you can consult people about this? Or have a staff that's dedicated towards, this problem of releasing weapons where you can't achieve its max potential, literally with its own, fucking style? Like, come on, get the fuck out of here. That's fucking stupid. Like, you should have a staff that is good enough to know that this is a problem. And I love RuneScape. I love their game, but Jesus Christ, dude, like this makes me think very little of Jagex. This itself makes me think that they're incompetent, which is what most people are thinking right now. actually that are melee scapers. And then so talking about the shards of Lang, right? Requires adrenaline for a hit cap bonus you use in like two places. And yeah, why did you make a special attack for this weapon that is so niche that is pretty much useless in almost all the places you bring it? What? Like, and like even when you do increase your hit cap, right? It gives you a marginal increase of damage. But there's other strats and things that people use with melee that before this was out, we're still getting the same kill times with this special attack and without it. So this was just a failed attempt of trying to like do something like where it just simply doesn't have the damage to support the weapon and the usefulness of it. And another thing that makes me feel like Jagex was absolutely incompetent with with doing things with melee is the Pterosaur Maul nerf that was fairly recently. And the reason why, so Jagex knows melee is underwhelming, but nerfs the Maul because the Death Touch Dart issue that was the real problem. Like, people were abusing the fact that like you can use the effect and bleed assault, right? You can bleed assault and then swap to weapons. But because of the influence with Death Touch darts, they nerfed the weapon and they nerfed all melee weapons so they cannot do what they're designed to do and how the style like performs. So they knew that it's in a bad spot, and they nerf it because of a problem with Death Touch darts and not the actual weapon itself. And this is a problem. Like this, like once again, this supports my theory where it's like, all right, well, Jagex doesn't have like good enough consultants or anyone in the support area that actually knows what they're doing, right, and actually understands the game and understands the functionality of the game and all of its things in it. And it's not there, and it frustrates me. Like, definitely frustrates me. And this used to be a 500 to 600 mil weapon for skillers to make, right? And with Primal Feast for the ingredients of Primal Feast, so like they can make some money on the side and skill. But you just took that away from them because now you made it a useless weapon that basically no one is going to use anywhere. When you have T95 weapons, where you get 2%, you get like a 2 tiers higher of damage, right? For like nothing basically. And you can't even like use it for like the best threshold that you have, which is assault, to increase your assault damage. Just absolutely pathetic. Absolutely just horrible. And do I think Jagex can redefine melee as a style? This is a big one. Like, honestly, with how much support melee needs right now, its weapons, its abilities, its ultimate, all of these problems, right? I don't think they're gonna actually be able to handle it. Now they can have the knowledge that it's bad, right? Or like it needs help, right? They can have the resources and the people telling them that it could be bad all day long. They're gonna have to do some hardcore overhauls in order to fundamentally change like melee as a style, because honestly, it's not an easy task. And not only is it an uneasy task, there's many things they'd have to change. Like, they'd have to solve the adrenaline. They have to solve all of its special attack weapons. They have to solve the adrenaline for the special attack weapons. They have to solve the gear. They have to solve the critical hit chance and the pocket slot items. Like, there's just too many things that they'd have to fix in order for it to be up to speed. Where it's still, which, by the way, if they were going to fix or update melee to make it competitive, it will have to be better than its predecessors, which is magic and range, in order to see any competitive use and any meta use in the current meta, which it looks like it's going to be impossible, because last time I checked, I don't think there's anything that can literally like being able to use ruby bolts with like a SGB outside of its ultimate, and inside its ultimate as well, to change its damage. Like, there's just nothing. It's nothing like that. Melee has that. I can honestly say that effort wise, that would be possible to actually do, like, and be competitive with range and magic. It just there's too much they'd have to do, and I honestly think that if they're gonna do it, it's gonna take them years, and then by the time they're done, changing and reworking the style, it's going to be still outclassed by range and magic. So what are you really waiting for? You might as well just use another style now because um, it is pathetic and it's going to take them forever just to be able to fix this. Well, not fix it, make it competitive, and make it worth using over other styles. And eh, it's whatever, I guess. Okay, so please, guys, follow me on Twitch for more memes. Zach the Greg Slayer on Twitch. I'm streaming usually Monday through Friday, right? I'm usually streaming Monday through Friday from 3 p.m. Eastern time to 12, 1, even sometimes late at night. Eastern time, late at night, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. At nights, evenings to nights is usually my schedule. And once again, this is a opinion based video for anyone that wants to know how I think about melee scaping and how I think it fares, and how I feel about the whole Jagex issue. And thank you guys. Have a good day.